Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So today we're going to take a little look at Wastelanders, particularly the storyline and the quests that came in that update that dropped way back in 2020 now, back in March of 2020. And yeah, it's easy to say something's a game-changing update, but I think Wastelanders thoroughly deserves it, not least of all because it introduced human NPCs to the game, but it represented a pretty big shift. So what we're going to focus on primarily today is the core story and the systems built into that. I'm going to try and avoid any spoilers in this. There's going to be some light spoilery stuff, but actually the overall goal here primarily is to show you how to approach this in a way that will avoid spoilers for this story and spoilers for other stories as well, because they do kind of tie together here and there. So primarily, as I say, we're going to focus on the core story. That's the one that focuses on the two main factions, the Settlers and the Raiders, and their hunt for hidden treasure. There are also other bits and pieces that sort of tie into this as well, as I say, some older stuff, some newer stuff. Wastelanders introduced the Wayward questline and that location as well, which focuses on the Wayward Bar and its trouble with a separate group of raiders, and they're all also interested in this treasure. Unsurprisingly, that is the major motivator for a lot of people reappearing in Appalachia, was there's rumours of buried treasure here. So, when you emerge from the vault, you walk down and you'll meet the Wayward just down the hill from Vault 76 and just north of Flatwoods. This is a very easy opportunity to end up picking up the Wayward's questline, and it's very much doable at this stage, whether you're just starting out or you've gone for the level 20 option or whatever, you can do this. I would kind of suggest you don't, though, if I'm honest. This questline basically focuses on low-level areas, the sort of northwest corner of the forest, which was kind of underutilised during the early stages of the game, so it was kind of cool that this added more to that area. But the slight problem is, as you go through it and get towards the end of it, it'll start pulling spoilers in your direction, which you may want to avoid. So I would probably say, and this is going to be a general piece of advice for the whole thing, focus on the Follow the Overseer, Investigate the Scorched Plague questline that you get as you leave the vault first. Make that your first goal, pretty much before anything else really, especially if this is your first playthrough, and then worry about other stuff later, because almost everything is built off the idea that you've probably already done that. Because obviously Wastelanders was the first, well, one of the first major content updates, but it came several years after the game launched, so it kind of built on a certain expectation there. The other thing worth mentioning is when you're out and about in Appalachia, you may notice the Brotherhood of Steel are kicking around. I would say avoid them as well for the same reasons. They arrived later and their content works on the basis that they arrived after everybody else. So it'll be a bit weird. I don't think it's so spoilery in that case, but it is a bit weird if you haven't done the stuff that was sort of released chronologically earlier, because it kind of assumes certain things from that time period. So also, the Brotherhood's questline kind of relies on certain elements of the Wastelanders questline as well, so you'll probably want to have that crossed off first anyway. So before we get into how everything works, why would you care about the Wastelanders questline? Well, short version, again, avoiding spoilers, is the rewards and stuff basically delivers a system at the end game with a whole pile of gear that is unique to that system and can only be accessed through that system. And to get access to this rewards system, this gear system, you do have to complete the Wastelanders content. It's not technically essential. There are other options and ways to get at pretty much equally good end-game gear through entirely different avenues that don't depend on the stuff from Wastelanders. But there is a lot of cool and unique stuff from the Wastelanders questline that you won't get if you don't go through that. And it'll hold you back in some other areas as well, maybe as well. And there's some camp stuff in there as well, so yeah, definitely worth going through this and getting that. Plus, it's just a fun questline as well. It's an interesting sort of faction dichotomy and a fun bit of story to work through as well. So, as I say, I would strongly recommend working through the base game story first and pursuing where's the Overseer gone and what's going on with the Scorched Plague and all of that. Because, as I say, once you've got that done, you won't have to double back on yourself, and the quest does build on it. So, do that first and then tackle the Wastelander stuff. So, on reaching level 20, or completing the Wayward's questline, and this is why I suggest leaving the Wayward, the quest that starts off the Wastelanders story, which is called The New Arrivals, will pop up. And again, if you want to avoid spoilers, this is a point where you would probably avoid the Wastelanders stuff, because it will drop spoilers for the base game story if you start investigating it. So if you haven't finished the base game, and you want to avoid those spoilers, I would say as soon as this story appears, ignore it. Maybe disable the quest if you need to. There is a radio station that pops up with it as well, and that will trigger the quest line and tell you where to go and stuff. But if you don't want the spoilers, again, do not touch that radio station, stay away from it. Otherwise you will get spoilers if you haven't finished the main story. If you have and you're ready to go, then obviously dive in, and new arrivals will introduce you to the situation and the arrival of the two new factions, the Raiders and the Settlers. It's quite a fun little questline, that one. It gets you to meet them, introduces you, the character, to those factions, and allows you to start building up a degree of trust with the two factions, who, understandably, when some random person wanders in out the wasteland, are disinclined to trust you. And once you've done that, you can work through it as you would a normal quest. It's kind of got two sub-quests. Obviously, a line to ingratiate yourself with the Settlers, and a separate one to ingratiate yourself with the Raiders. You get to the end of that, you've achieved a certain level of, okay, this person's alright, and then you will progress on to the next part of the Wastelanders story, which involves investigating the nature of the treasure, what is it, and where is it as well. So you'll sort of find that out through the second major chunk of quest line. Not going to tell you what that is, we're going to try and avoid any spoilers there, but obviously you'll find that part out. So once you've got that knowledge, you must now choose who you're going to work with in order to recover the treasure. Now, that could be either the Settlers or the Raiders, and we'll kick off a quest line with that faction. Obviously, both sides have different ideas and attitudes and approaches to gaining access to the treasure, so you get a different vibe. It's technically possible to do a significant chunk of both quest lines before you hit a point of no return and you have to actually finally pick a side. Or if you're into the sort of immersion and the role-playing side of things, I would say don't do that. Maybe do a character who's more affiliated with the Raiders, do another character who's more affiliated with the Settlers, and just pick a side and stick to it. If you don't care about that, you can kind of work a bit through both of them and then pick a side later on. Speaking of, if you want to decide which faction to choose, you can either go with the RP stuff, as I suggested before, or if you're not too bothered about that, you might want to choose based on the rewards that are available. So we'll get into a bit more detail here in a second, but there are several reward pools available, and they are tied to the factions. So there's stuff available at the end of the Wastelanders questline that is unique to the Raiders, the stuff that's available at the end of the Wastelanders questline that is unique to the Settlers. You can get access to both, but you will get a head start with whichever faction you side with, or you can get a head start, I should say. So you might want to base your decision on which faction's rewards list you want access to first. If that's the case, then down in the description there is a link which will take you to the Faction Reputations Rewards page on the Fallout 76 wiki. Amazing website, the team behind that do amazing work, it's absolutely brilliant resource. Obviously, there are minor spoilers on that page, it's kind of unavoidable, so if you want to avoid that, then maybe don't check that link, but if you do want to have a look at the available rewards and who's got what, I will put that in the description so you can just follow that on through. So, we're going to have slightly heavier spoilers here because we're getting on to stuff that deals with the end of the Wastelanders storyline. I'll still try and keep it as light as possible, but it's going to get a little bit more to the point here. So, throughout the Wastelanders story, you may well notice that certain actions accrue you reputation with the two factions. You see little pop-ups, little sort of cartoon icons, as Fallout 76 does. And if you want to check this in more detail, go into your map, open up the social menu, and up at the top right corner, you'll see the reputation sort of bar with the two factions, and when you mouse over it, you'll see a little pop-up gives you a bit more detail on the left. So you can see how your reputation is progressing with the two factions. So in order to get each faction's best gear, you will need to get the best level of reputation with them, something that you will have to build up over time. It takes a while. You will get, as I say, a head start with whichever faction you side with in the course of the Wastelanders questline, but you are not shut out from either faction. Picking one side does not exclude you from the other, it just means it'll take you a bit longer to get there. But yeah, you can check it on your map here. And as you can see from mine, my main character is maxed out with both factions. It did take absolutely ages, but you get there, and there is some cool gear behind it, so it's something to work at. Fortunately, the tasks required to get there are not particularly onerous, so you can add them to your list of daily stuff to do. Speaking of this reputation thing, at the end of the story, you basically have to decide who you're going to share the treasure with. So there is the faction you worked with, you can share it with both factions equally, or you can be greedy and keep it all to yourself. If you keep your word and share it with the faction that you worked with along the way, you get a big reputation boost with that and a big head start on working towards their best gear, or getting access to their best stuff. If you share with both factions, you'll get a small reputation boost with both, and you'll have further to go with both of them effectively, but less far than you would with the faction you didn't side with. So you start with a more level playing field, but you've still got a long way to go. The end result's probably about the same, but if you've got particularly one side that you do want to get a head start with, you might as well go down that road. You can also be greedy and keep the treasure for yourself, and you will be able to spend this treasure later on. It's the key thing that you have to spend in order to get access to these faction-based rewards, but there's nowhere near enough of it initially rewarded at the end of the quest line to make it worth keeping it to yourself, unless you really want to do it for a RP reason. But the cost of doing that is you lose significant reputation with your allies, and you will have accrued quite a bit along the way of working through the quest line. So essentially, you're kind of kicking yourself back to square one doing that, so it's probably not the way to go, especially not if you specifically want some of that gear. So I would say pick the faction whose gear you want, or whichever one you want to roleplay with, and then just take the reputation boost with them is probably the way to go. There is an additional group of NPCs, I'm not going to say anything more about them than that are involved in this questline. You'll meet them towards the latter stages of the questline. And they also have a bunch of gear, much like the Raiders and the Settlers do, that you can spend the treasure on as well. And their loot pool, I suppose, will also tie into the Brotherhood of Steel stuff later on. But for now, they have their own loot pool as well. They're not tied into the reputation system. I just mentioned them because they exist, and so does their gear pool. So something not to overlook, basically. Be aware they are there. That's this additional group of NPCs that you'll meet in the latter stages of the Wastelanders questline. They're fairly obvious. You won't miss them. So, once you've finished the storyline, you've got your reputation to whatever stages it may be at there, you may want to raise your reputation further if you want the best gear available from the various factions. And this is the bit where it really is going to slow down, because you need to complete faction daily quests in order to gain additional reputation and slowly work towards getting that top tier of reputation and access to the best rewards. So for the Settlers, that means going up to Foundation and seeing Ward. He is in a little capsule over to the right as you come in the gate, and he will send you off on a quest called Vital Equipment. Now this goes once per day, it's really short. You've basically got to go and recover a piece of stolen tech from a raider who has nicked it and run off with it. It's the same quest every day, dead simple. The locations change, but the principle's basically the same, and upon completion you'll get a few rewards, including, most importantly, reputation with the Settlers. For the Raiders, there's actually 2 quests, and they alternate on a daily basis, so it's still only 1 daily quest per day, but it'll be a different one depending on the day. The first one of those is Retirement Plan, and you need to see Roxy. She is basically out in the open in Crater, standing next to a bus, just a little bit past where the vendors are. The vendors are on the left, you carry on, Roxy's just up there, just leaning next to a bus, and she'll send you off to deal with a deserter, basically. The other quest that can come up on the alternate day is called Importance of Communication, and you get that from Ren. They have communication equipment from the old space station that she's trying to keep running, and she's in the kind of back room right up at the back of Crater. So if you carry on round, past the vendors, past Roxy, there's a set of doors you can go in, and Ren's hanging out in there with her communication equipment. And we'll need you to go and recover some stuff and get some stuff to repair this equipment. And again, either of those will give similar rewards and result in a little boost of reputation with the Raiders. It's slow, it takes a long time, but the quests themselves don't actually take that long. It's just the acquisition of reputation, so something to bear in mind if you want to sort of work towards that high tier gear. So, the last question, as I mentioned earlier, there is nowhere near enough treasure available from the Wastelanders questline to get you all the gear you want. Nowhere near, not even close. Whilst eventually you'll have the opposite problem, that you've kind of run out of stuff you want to buy, that's inevitable. It does take a little while to get there. So how do we get more treasure to spend? Well, it's actually quite simple, really. You will need treasury notes, and you can get them from a number of sources. That is daily faction quests, so those ones we've just talked about, Vital Equipment for the Settlers, or Retirement Plan and Importance of Communication for the Raiders. Completing those will get you a grant of treasury notes. You can also complete public events, so those are the ones that pop up every 20 minutes and have the exclamation point in the little sort of hexagon icon on the map. Seasonal events like Fashion Act or Meat Week or Invaders from Beyond or Mothman Equinox, all that stuff. They also drop treasury notes, and if you get Elder rank completion of a daily op, you get a few treasury notes from that as well. So you take this sort of kind of currency over to either Foundation or Crater, and you will find a machine where you can put the treasury note in and get treasure out. For Foundation, that machine is up near the entrance to where you will have met Paige, the leader of the settlers. So there's a lift that goes down underneath the Spruce Knob Tower thing, and that's where the machine is. Sort of over behind that, you can see Samuel, who is the vendor with whom you can spend the treasure at Foundation. For the Raiders, the machine is inside the core, so it's in the internal location. You go in there, turn to the left, and the machine is on the left. It's just past the Mr. Handy robot, Mortimer, I believe his name is. I think it was. Either way, he's just on the left as you go in. And that Mr. Handy is the Raiders' treasure vendor. I'm using the word treasure so I don't have to spoil things. But yeah, the vendor is there and the machine is just past. So that's how you get the extra treasure in order to continue buying the rewards you want. So there we go. An ongoing system ties into a number of other things. Primarily, I would say, work through the base game first, then do Wastelanders afterwards, and then subsequent quests on after that. In terms of main quests, there's obviously a whole load of side quests that you kind of do whenever, but in terms of main categorized quests, then that's the order I would do it, primarily so that you don't get any unwanted spoilers as you're progressing through earlier stories, because yeah, subsequent releases of content like this have built upon pre-existing content, and it kind of assumes you have knowledge from those pre-released pieces of content like the base game, and then obviously the Brotherhood stuff has assumptions regarding you having played through Wastelanders as well, that sort of thing. So that should hopefully give you the general information you need and help things sort of come together and make sense. You may want to refer back to this. I know it was a bit vague in places, so yeah, once you get a bit more context and you're playing through Wastelanders, it might not hurt to refer back to this video and then you'll know what I'm talking about in a bit more detail. But it's kind of hard to give you all the information without giving you spoilers as well. Yeah, I hope you found this useful and informative anyway, and it pointed you in the right direction. As I say, I might do a video before too long on sort of my recommended order for doing main story quests. Not least of all because there are spoilers and dependencies and things like that, so... But anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you did like this one, please do drop subs and likes. I very much appreciate. Down below, as always, apart from that link I mentioned earlier, we've got social media links, merch store, channel memberships on the blue join button if you want to support the channel that way. I massively appreciate it. Really helps out. Huge thank you to everyone who's done that already. If you get a chance, you can join us for live streams as well. We'll play Fallout 76. We're having a lot of fun with Fallout 4 at the moment as well, and we've got a few other bits and pieces on the side as well. So, yeah, jump in there if you get a chance as well. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.